11:31 on the Frank and Jill Show. Thanks for being with us today. We're really glad you're here, and I'm really excited to say that we have Kim Bolourtchi with us today. Kim is a nationally recognized speaker. She goes to Fortune 500 companies and helps leaders be at their best and helps other people be led by those leaders to be at their best. She's also a very successful attorney who has argued and won cases in front of the Missouri Supreme Court. And in her spare time, she teaches communication courses at Maryville University in St. Louis. And one of your most popular courses, or the most popular course, is one that you teach on conflict. Why do you think so many students flock to it?
I think students flock to it because there isn't a space right now in the world where they can have conversations without judgment, where they feel safe to air differences in a respectful way. And I create that space for them. And so I think they're yearning for that.
And what about right now, at the most polarizing time in our lives with this election? What do you recommend for everybody in terms of how they handle the election, either whether your side won or whether your side lost?
Well, obviously, we're in a tough moment right now, especially right now, today. So my first piece of advice is that we all need to take a breath and we need to give each other some grace. We need to give each other a moment to process whatever we're feeling. And that's just reality, right? Any argument that people want to have right now about why people shouldn't feel the way they feel is going to be counterproductive. So I think, we need to take a second. Beyond that, though, do you want to say something?
Yeah, I wonder, in a marriage, it's always best to talk it out right away. Okay, you both agree. But when it comes to politics, is it better just to avoid it and act like it's not there? If you're dealing with somebody is on opposite sides.
No, I don't think avoiding it and pretending it's not there is the way to go. And I think, in fact, that's a huge problem. I think one of the reasons we've gotten as polarized as we have is because we are in the habit of doing that. If you don't agree with me, I don't want to talk to you. If we can't, see eye to eye on everything, we're not going to have a conversation. We're avoiding hard conversations. I'm simply suggesting we take a second before we re-engage. Not that we pretend this isn't a hard moment. I think we acknowledge it. I think the other thing is that we just have to agree to be respectful when we're going to disagree. We need to have hard conversations. Absolutely. We have to be able to talk about our differences and why we have them. The problem is that people are having these in a way that it's about being right as opposed to understanding where someone else is coming from.
Yeah, and I think that's what you helped me understand so much is that a lot of people approach these hard conversations thinking, I just need to have my case ready to prosecute. I need my facts right, because if you understand my facts, then I'm going to convince you to think differently. And you teach a totally different paradigm for how we need to communicate about that. Do I understand that correctly?
Correct. Because the reality is, I always say it's not a conversation if you have to be right. And when you approach a conversation with, I'm going to prove to you that you're wrong, at the outset, you're not leaving space for the other person to be heard, right? You're thinking about what am I going to say and how can I be very persuasive and convincing, and that's not leaving space for the other person's perspective. So to have a conversation that's going to be productive, it's really about listening and asking good questions. So, the goal is to understand. It's not to agree, by the way. I'm not talking to you and hearing your perspective because I'm hoping you're going to change my mind or that I'm going to change yours. It's to understand why we might see things differently, to understand that, we do disagree, but there's space for respect in that disagreement.
Who do you think, male or female, is better at this in being able to discuss things? Not to generalize, but look, you've done this for a long time. Don't you think women are better at this, that handling a difficult topic and wanting to talk it out while a male would want to avoid it to avoid conflict?
It's a hard question to answer because I think a lot of it has to do with your upbringing and sort of your own filter and your perspective. There are men that I've encountered who are incredibly willing to have conversations and use a lot of words and talk a lot about what they're feeling, what they're thinking. I think as a society, we discourage that in men. It's, be brave and be bold and just say the thing and don't leave a lot of space. And women tend to use more words. You know, the data says we use a lot more words when we communicate and when we talk. So you'd think that women would be better at doing that. But the reality is it's a skill. And when emotions are triggered and we get upset or we feel like we're threatened in some way, we're not going to be at our best unless we have practiced doing this and we understand that we need to be thoughtful in the way that we're approaching each other. And I don't know that that's gender specific.
And I know recently you had a situation where you went in to teach this in a high school class and the students said, you know, the thing that we disagree with or that we avoid talking about is politics. And the teachers stepped in and did something interesting that I thought was a little disappointing.
Yeah, that was incredibly disheartening to me and surprising. The kids did want guidance on how to have hard conversations around politics, and I was all ready to do it and kind of set it up and explain the framework. And before I could even go there, I was shut down from behind. The adult in the room said, you know, we're going to start with something easier and kind of punted it back to a really simple topic and took me aside and said, we can't do that. You can't touch that. We cannot talk about politics. And I said,
even though it wasn't about convincing anybody one way or the other.
This was not about policy. This wasn't about, you know, picking a side. This was literally teaching them how to engage in a respectful way. The problem is, you know, we mentioned the word politics. We mentioned a candidate's name. And so the assumption is that we can't do that. It's off limits. And the concern was that parents were going to call. Not that the kids couldn't handle it. Not that they weren't prepared to have a hard conversation. But that we couldn't do that, right, based on policy in the school. The problem is it's sending this message that is hard conversations are bad. We can't talk if we disagree. And so although, you know, I agree it might not be appropriate to have conversations about who's right and who's wrong, that was not the intention. It was to create a space where people could learn how to do this in a really respectful way.
I bet your classes are sold out at Maryville. I bet you can't get in. Everybody wants to take your class.
My classes are popular. Yeah.
And what is the biggest takeaway you hear from students after they have learned the process and are faced with the fact that many of them do have differing opinions and thoughts and even values as it relates to political views?
The biggest takeaway is that they are able to do two things differently. They are able to see each other and their humanity, which is amazing because a lot of times they come in with very limited views of what other people are like based on what they've been exposed to. And they start to see each other as people. So they see beyond the labels, beyond just a viewpoint, right? So they can see each other in the entirety of the person. They also find that they're better able to articulate their own perspectives in really respectful ways. So instead of being quiet and simmering or just only talking to people who agree with them, they're able to have conversations and kind of model this out in the world, which is really cool to see because we need more of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Kim Bolourtchi, how can people find out more about what you do?
LinkedIn is honestly the very best way to connect with me. I'm just Kim Bolourtchi on LinkedIn. I love having conversations. I love connecting with people. That's the best way to reach me. I also have a website, KimBolourtchi.com.
And it's Bolourtchi?
It is.
Okay.
Yes.
And tell us, you have one book recommendation for folks who are really wanting to maybe do better about this.
I do. I just started reading this book myself. I came across it. Shola Richards has written a book called Civil Unity. And it's a new release. It is phenomenal in giving practical strategies for how we can have hard conversations in a civil, respectful way. And it's got really, really good takeaways and like a how to do this. And so I really highly recommend it for anyone who wants strategies to go out and do better today.
Kim Bolourtchi, thanks so much for being with us. You gave us a lot of really good things to think about, and we really appreciate it.